There's something about the deep sea that unsettles us in a way no forest, no abandoned building, and no haunting ever could. Maybe it's the crushing pressure, the absolute darkness, or the fact that more than 80% of it is still unexplored. Down there, anything could exist. Anything could be watching. Tonight, I have 3 stories, supposedly true, submitted by people claiming to have survived encounters that should be impossible. Whether you believe them or not, that's up to you. These are 3 true, unsettling deep-sea horror stories. Story 1, The Last Dive of the Nepenthe. My name is Alexander Grant, and for almost 15 years I worked as a marine surveyor for an independent research company based out of Reykjavik, Iceland. I've had my fair share of odd encounters at sea, strange sounds, bizarre readings on sonar, and once what looked like a massive shadow moving beneath our vessel at impossible speed. But nothing comes close to what I saw on the Nepenthe expedition. This happened in 2019, about 280 nautical miles south of Greenland, in one of the deepest regions of the North Atlantic. The purpose of the expedition was routine, mapping the seabed for a potential deep-sea cable route. We had a crew of 9 and a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV we called the Sparrow. The area was known for unpredictable trenches, moving sediments, and seismic shifts, but never for what we eventually found. On the 3rd night, sometime after 11 p.m., the captain called me to the bridge. "Alex," he said, "take a look at this." On the sonar, a faint but massive shape appeared, nearly 400 meters long, sitting stationary at the bottom. "Not a whale, not a natural ridge, something metallic. It looks like a shipwreck," I said. "Too big," the captain replied, "and not the right shape." We were in waters deeper than most wrecks could survive without collapsing. But curiosity won. We prepared the Sparrow for descent. It took almost 3 hours for the ROV to reach the seafloor. The video feed flickered, then stabilized, showing silt and darkness as the headlights swept around. But then the shape appeared. At first it looked like a collapsed building. Then the camera adjusted focus, and we saw it clearly. The surface was smooth, curved, almost like the hull of a submarine, but it wasn't any design I had ever seen. There were no markings, no external features, only a long, seamless metallic body half buried in sand. "Could be military," our engineer Lena whispered. "But whose?" We kept the Sparrow circling it. The object was cold, perfectly still, almost unnerving. But then something happened. As the ROV passed near one end of it, a section of the metallic surface shifted. It opened, not violently, not suddenly, but like a slow, deliberate iris, widening. We all froze. "Pull it back," the captain said. "Now." Our pilot tried. The controls didn't respond fast enough. Something emitted from the opening, not a creature, not debris, but sound. A long, low-frequency rumble that made every monitor vibrate. Even up on the ship, hundreds of meters above, we felt it through the hull. Then came the interference. The video feed distorted, shifting into static. "Cut the line," the captain ordered. But before we could, the feed came back for just a moment. And that moment still haunts me. The opening in the metallic object wasn't a hatch. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic. A pulsing ring of flesh-like tissue, lined with structures that looked like sensory tendrils brushing against the Sparrow like fingers testing an object in the dark. And from inside, something moved, something huge. Something that filled the entire iris with a dark, rippling surface. Then, the feed went to black. We pulled back what remained of the tether. The Sparrow was gone. Not cut, but melted. The cable's end was fused and warped, like it had been exposed to incredible heat. We were shaken, but the captain insisted we stay on course. He wanted to inform headquarters before abandoning the expedition. But the ocean wasn't done with us. At about 3:17 a.m., the ship's lights flickered. The engines throttled down without command. The radar began showing movement below us, large, slow, circling. "Whatever we disturbed," Lena muttered, "it's under us." The ship trembled violently, as if something massive had scraped its underside. People were shouting, alarms were blaring, and then a sound rose from below. The same low-frequency hum, only this time it was loud enough to rattle tools off tables and make our teeth ache. We scrambled to the deck and looked over the railings. The ocean was pitch black, but something was rising. A shape, or multiple shapes. As the water below churned, faint streaks of bioluminescence outlined forms that were far too large and moving in a coordinated pattern, circling us, a living structure. An entire interconnected organism, or multiple organisms acting as one. Start the engines. The captain screamed, but the controls weren't responding. Then a long, thin appendage emerged from the dark, silent, towering, almost translucent. It wasn't a tentacle. Tentacles move fluidly. This moved with intention. It hovered above us, scanning, listening, and then it tapped the hull. A gentle, almost curious sound, like a knuckle on a door. Tong, tong, tong. With each tap, the metal dented inward. Crew members panicked. Someone screamed. Someone else vomited over the side. When the tapping stopped, the appendage slowly retracted into the depths. Just before it vanished, we heard it again, the low hum. But layered beneath it was something else. A pattern, a rhythm, a language. At sunrise, whatever had been circling us retreated. The engines came back online without explanation, and we turned the Nepenthe around, heading full speed for Iceland. None of us slept on the return voyage. When we reached port, 2 men claiming to be from the Oceanic Oversight Division confiscated our logs, the damaged cable, and every recording from the expedition. They warned us not to discuss anything we'd seen, but I am. Because the deep sea holds things older and larger than we can imagine. Things that communicate, explore, defend. Things that might even sleep beneath us as we travel across the world. And sometimes, like on that night, we wake them up. Story 2. The diver who didn't return alone. My name is Nathan Turner, and for over a decade, I served as a diver for a special operations unit in the US Navy. I'm not allowed to say which one, but I can tell you that we specialized in deep water recoveries and underwater reconnaissance. Most people think the ocean is just sharks, currents, and old wrecks. But there are places the public isn't told about, where entire dive teams refuse to work. Places marked off limits not because of national security, but because of what lives there. The story I'm about to tell happened in 2014, somewhere west of the Mariana Trench. We weren't told why we were being sent there, only that a research submersible had been lost and we were tasked with finding it. We had recovered submarines before, wrecks, debris fields, dead crew members. But this one was different. The sub had gone silent less than 2 hours after launch. No distress beacon, no final message, just a sudden dead stop from all telemetry. Our briefing officer said something I'll never forget. The last thing recorded was movement, not seismic activity, not a structural failure. Movement, something large passed beneath the sub. We thought it was a whale, a giant squid, something explainable. We were wrong. My dive partner was Corporal Henry Blake, someone I trusted with my life. Calm, experienced, never panicked under pressure. The 2 of us were the first team sent down. Visibility at that depth was almost zero. Cloudy water, particulate everywhere. But as we descended, we eventually saw it, the sub, or what was left of it. It was still intact, structurally, but the hull looked punctured, not crushed like from pressure. Punctured, almost surgically. Clean circular openings, melted edges. Our comms officer spoke in our ears. Visual assessment? Henry answered before I could. It looks like something drilled into it. We circled the sub, keeping our lights trained on every surface. I peered through the main viewport. Inside, the crew's bodies were still strapped into their seats, motionless, eyes open. Their expressions, their faces looked like they died staring at something that shouldn't exist. I floated back, confused. Then Henry said, "Do you hear that?" I didn't at first. Then slowly, faintly, through the water, a rhythmic clicking. Not like dolphins, not like anything biological. It sounded mechanical and close. "Control," Henry said. "We've got..." He didn't finish because the clicking stopped. Everything went silent. And then the dark below us moved. My light barely reached it. A shape, long, wide, gliding upward. Smooth movement, no visible fins, no tail. Just a black mass rising like a balloon. I froze. Henry whispered through the comm, What is that? The shape passed beneath a section of the wreck, and only then did we see the scale of it. It wasn't one creature, it was multiple, all moving together like a school of fish. But each one was enormous, eel-like, with pale, ring-shaped mouths instead of faces. They didn't swim like fish. They moved like ribbon, flowing, undulating. None of them paid attention to us. They passed us, circling the submarine like they were scanning it, studying it. Then the clicking returned, louder. "Control, do you read?" I said. "We have contact. Unknown life forms. Repeat." Static. Then another sound broke through. Not clicking, not movement. Something brushing against my leg. I jerked my flashlight down. Nothing. But Henry muttered, "Nate, there, behind us." We turned in slow motion. 3 of them hovered just a few meters away. Their mouths weren't open, but you could see rows of tiny pale ridges inside. Not teeth, not gums. Something like soft cartilage, like they were tasting the water. One of them drifted closer, too close. Henry raised his spear gun. I whispered, "Don't shoot. You'll provoke." The creature snapped its mouth open. Not wide, but enough to release a small cloud of milky fluid into the water. It spread instantly toward us. My eyes burned. My suit sensors started beeping. Some chemical reaction was happening. "Up," I screamed. "Ascend. Now." We kicked upward hard, my vision warping as the fluid drifted around us. But then I saw something else. Something impossible. The fluid wasn't random. It moved like it was alive. It slithered across the hull of the submarine. It wrapped around one of the creature's own bodies. It reacted to light. It avoided pressure zones. It behaved like a neural network. Like it was thinking, "What the hell is this?" Henry gasped. We started to ascend faster. Then the clicking changed, no longer random. It matched our movement. One creature followed us up, at first slowly, then faster. Then its mouth opened wider and wider until I saw into it rows of inward folding flesh spiraling downward like a drill. "Nate," Henry whispered, "it's coming." I kicked harder, heart pounding, but the creature matched our speed effortlessly. Salt water churned around it like it didn't have to displace fluid at all. Henry fired his spear gun. The spear hit the creature, barely penetrating, and the creature stopped. Just froze, suspended. Then it turned its entire body toward Henry with this slow, disturbing tilt. It opened its mouth again. A soft, vibrating hum came out. Not loud, but deep, like a tuning fork pressed to bone. And Henry's entire body spasmed. He screamed through the calm, not a panicked scream, a full-body, involuntary, agonized scream. "Nathan, help me. Help." His arms jerked uncontrollably. His regulator almost came loose. His legs twisted as if invisible hands were bending them the wrong way. "Henry, stop moving." I can't. I grabbed him, pulling upward, but the hum intensified. I felt it too. In my teeth, my skull, my spine, a buzzing static inside my bones. I almost dropped him. Then the creature lunged. Not fast. Slow. Too slow. Like a snake closing around prey, its mouth enveloped Henry's left arm. He shrieked. And then, the creature didn't bite. It pulsed, like it was drawing something out. Henry's arm went limp instantly. His voice fell silent. Then the creature released him and drifted backward. His arm floated loosely, hollow, deflated, as if the bone and muscle had been sucked out in one movement. The creature had extracted it, without tearing, without breaking the suit, just absorbed it. I grabbed Henry under the shoulder and kicked upward with everything I had. He was breathing, but weak. His calm was filled with shock whimpers. The creature didn't follow this time. It just hovered, backed by dozens more silhouettes lurking deeper in the dark, watching, as if they already knew we weren't a threat or a meal. We broke the surface and were pulled onto the recovery vessel immediately. Medics rushed Henry away. I ripped my mask off and collapsed on the deck, still hearing the vibrating hum in my skull like tinnitus. Our commanding officer was waiting. What the hell happened down there? I told him everything. The creatures, the fluid, the attack, Henry's arm, the shapes in the deep. He stared at me without blinking. Then he said, "You didn't encounter anything. There was no contact, no organisms. Your partner suffered acute myopathy. That is your official statement." I yelled at him, told him they were lying, covering something up. His reply chilled me. "This is not the first time a diver has come up talking about things in that trench, and not one of them has ever kept their career after refusing to stay quiet. 2 men from an unnamed department boarded our ship within hours. They took my dive footage, my suit, even Henry's ruined arm sleeve. Henry was airlifted to a military hospital in Guam. They told me he survived, but I never saw him again. I left the Navy 2 years later. I still dive recreationally, but never in deep water, because now I know that some species down there aren't just animals. They're organized, intelligent, coordinated, and they don't kill for food. They harvest." Story 3. The passenger who saw something at 3 a.m. I've gone on 4 cruises in my life, and I've always loved them. The open ocean, the night sky, the peace. I used to think the ocean was calming. After what I saw during my last trip, I'll never board a ship again. This happened in 2019, on a cruise traveling from Lisbon to New York. I was 28 at the time, traveling alone after a rough breakup. I figured a 2-week cruise would clear my head. For the first 3 nights, things were normal. Meals, deck shows, sunsets, the usual cruise fun. But on the 4th night, something strange started happening. Something the ship staff never explained. Something no one was allowed to talk about afterward. And it all began at 3 a.m. My cabin was on the 7th deck, one of the cheaper interior rooms. No window, no balcony. At exactly 3:07 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Knock. At first I thought it came from inside my dream, but then I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate. Like someone tapping rhythmically on my cabin wall. I sat up, confused. Nobody should be knocking on the walls of the interior cabins. The walls didn't connect to any hallways. For a moment, I wondered if it was a passenger next door, but then I remembered. My cabin was at the far end of the row. I only had one neighbor on my right. The knocking was coming from my left, from the wall that only bordered the ship's exterior hull, the wall facing the ocean. I froze. The knocking continued, 3 taps at a time. Slow, methodical, almost intentional. I got closer to the wall and listened. Then I heard something else, a voice. Not loud, not clear, but like someone speaking underwater. A low, muffled moaning sound that almost resembled a word. Something like, Rea. My name, am Maria. I stumbled backward. My heart was hammering. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the front desk. But then the sound stopped, and something scraped against the metal hull from the outside. A long, dragging scrape, like nails or claws. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went straight to the service desk. I tried explaining what I heard. The knocking, the scraping, the voice calling my name. The woman at the desk barely reacted. Instead, she forced a polite smile and said, "Mom, many passengers hear strange noises at night. The hull is thick, sound carries. The ocean plays tricks." I insisted. I told her it wasn't normal ocean noise. That's when her expression changed, like she realized I wasn't going to drop it. She leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Don't open your cabin door at night. Don't respond to anything you hear. And don't go near deck 3. Then she quickly straightened up, smiled again, and said, "Enjoy your stay." That was the moment I knew something was wrong with the ship. Very wrong. I wasn't planning to go looking for trouble, but her warning made it worse. I spent the whole day thinking about it. Deck 3 wasn't a passenger area, it was a maintenance deck. Only staff were supposed to access it. But around 10 p.m. after dinner, I saw something strange. A man dressed in what looked like old, torn clothing slowly walked down the hallway. He looked sunburned, dehydrated, shaky on his feet. I thought he was a lost passenger, but then I noticed something else. He was leaving a trail of seawater behind him, dripping wet from head to toe, his hair, his shirt, his shoes, all soaked, like he had just climbed out of the ocean. He didn't look at anyone, didn't speak. He just shuffled forward, step by step, water collecting under him. A staff member noticed and yelled, "Sir, sir, stop." The wet man didn't react. 2 more staff appeared almost instantly, way too fast, like they were already watching for something. One reached for him, And that's when the wet man turned his head. Not all the way, not a normal turn. His head rotated farther than it should, almost 130 degrees. That's when I saw his face. His eyes were pale, not blind, not cloudy, just too pale, almost reflective. His skin was bloated, swollen like a drowned body. The staff grabbed him abruptly, one on each arm, not gently at all. They didn't ask questions or try to help him. They dragged him away, down toward deck 3. I followed at a distance. My pulse was racing. Before they disappeared down the restricted stairwell, I heard the wet man speak for the first time. His voice was cracked, uneven, like someone who hadn't used vocal cords in years. He said one thing. There, still, underneath. The staff grabbed his mouth and forced him silent. Then the door shut. I didn't see the wet man again. What happened the next night is something I still can't logically explain. Another 3 a.m. Another noise waking me up. This time, not knocking. This time, someone was breathing outside my cabin door. Not gentle breathing. A slow, heavy, wet breathing. Like lungs filled with water. I stared at the door, frozen. The sound grew louder. Then, tap. A single knock. Right at the door. I didn't move. A voice whispered through the crack beneath the door. Let me in. Please. I'm cold. A man's voice. The same voice I heard in the hallway. The drowned man. Please. I need to come inside. I shook my head even though he couldn't see. Then I noticed something horrifying. Water began seeping under the door. A small stream. Then a puddle. Then more, like someone was spilling water from a bucket outside. Except it wasn't water. It was thick, dark, murky. I backed up to the bed, shaking. The tapping returned. Frantic, faster. Maria, let me in. Please, please, let me in. It's so cold down there. My stomach twisted. He knew my name. How? Then the breathing shifted. It grew deeper, more violent, like the man was gurgling ocean water. Open, not a request, a command. The door handle rattled violently. I screamed and called guest services through the phone. Everything went silent instantly. No breathing, no tapping. The water stopped spreading. By the time security arrived, there was no trace of anything. But I couldn't sleep after that, and the worst night was still to come. At sunrise, I went straight to the deck for air. I wanted out of that cabin. There were maintenance workers standing near the railing. They weren't doing repairs, though. They were staring into the water. I approached slowly. Is something wrong? One of them looked at me, startled, and said, "You should go back inside, miss." But I didn't. I peered over the railing. At first I saw nothing, just the endless stretch of dark blue water. Then something moved below the surface. Something big, a pale shape about 40 feet long, drifting just beneath the waves. It wasn't a whale. It wasn't shaped like one. It wasn't a shark or a dolphin. It had humanoid limbs, long, thin arms trailing behind it, a torso that twisted unnaturally, and a head far too large. Its body rolled slightly, revealing a patch of skin. Human skin, bloated and pale. Then it vanished into the darkness. I stepped back, trembling. One of the workers whispered, "They're following us again." That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat on my bed, lights on, eyes fixed on the door. At exactly 3 a.m., my cabin lights flickered. A low rumbling sound shook the ship. Not thunder, not engines. Something scraped along the exterior hull. Something massive, dragging, the other pulling, clawing. Then, from behind my wall, the wall facing the ocean, something slammed into it. Hard. The entire room shuddered. I covered my mouth, shaking violently. A deep voice echoed through the wall, a voice that shouldn't have been able to project through steel. A voice that sounded like it was spoken underwater, gargling and broken. "Come back, to the deep." Something hit the wall again, and again, and again. Like it wanted inside, like it was looking for me. I curled up on the floor crying, praying it would stop. I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember waking up the next morning to an announcement. All passengers must remain inside their cabins. Do not approach windows or balconies. This is for your safety. Around noon, the ship stopped moving, completely. No engine sound, no vibration. Passengers were panicking. Rumors were flying everywhere. Mechanical failure, mutiny, pirates, you name it. Then the captain's voice echoed through the intercom. "We are making an unscheduled stop. Please follow staff instructions." The ship slowly turned toward the nearest port, still days away, but something felt off. People were pointing at the water. I forced myself to look, and I felt sick. There were shadows just beneath the surface. Dozens, maybe hundreds, moving with the ship, keeping pace. Some large, some human-sized, some with long limbs drifting upward like seaweed. Every time sunlight hit the water just right, I saw patches of pale skin, eyes, faces, hands stretching upward, reaching for the hull. One shape, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, extended a hand that almost brushed the surface. People screamed. Some fainted. The staff tried to block everyone's view. By sunset, the shadows sank back into the dark. But the ship never resumed normal speed. We limped the rest of the journey at half power. The crew looked terrified. Passengers whispered about creatures, drowned bodies walking, something calling at night, but none of it was acknowledged. When we finally docked in New York, the ship went into an immediate technical lockdown. Passengers were told not to share what happened. Staff refused to comment. I left the ship shaking, exhausted, traumatized. But the worst part, as I walked down the gangway toward the port, I passed a line of crew members standing silently along the railing. One of them, a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days, leaned forward just enough for only me to hear. She whispered, "They weren't here for the ship. They were here for someone on board." I froze. She stared at me with hollow eyes, then said, "They were following you." And then she walked away before I could ask anything else. I haven't been near the ocean since, and sometimes at night, even though I'm thousands of miles from the sea, I swear I can still hear knocking. 3 taps, slow, deliberate, right behind my wall. People on deck began screaming. Some yelled for the staff. Others pointed and backed away from the railings. Those pale shapes weren't swimming like animals. They were floating upward, rising vertically, as if being pulled by invisible strings. Their faces were swollen and pale. Their hair drifted behind them like dark smoke. They weren't alive, but they weren't exactly dead either. They followed the ship for hours. Every few minutes, one of them would brush against the hull, making a hollow, echoing thunk that vibrated through the metal. Some passengers pressed their faces to the windows to see, but the crew rushed down the hallways, ordering everyone to step away from any glass. Around 5 p.m., something massive surfaced beside the ship. I thought it was a whale at first, but then the water rolled back, revealing 3 long, human-like arms breaking the surface, each one at least 6 feet long, pale and stretched unnaturally. The whole thing never fully surfaced, just enough to show the outline of its shape curved like a giant spine twisting under the water. Even the crew stepped back in fear. The ship's engines roared to life moments later. We weren't heading to port anymore. We were fleeing. The ship accelerated so hard that passengers fell over, but the shapes beneath the surface sped up too. They kept pace with us. That's when the screaming started again, this time from the port side. People near the windows backed away as the drowned faces pressed themselves against the glass from the outside. Their eyes were milky white. Their lips were split. Their fingers dragged down the windows, leaving long streaks of seawater. One woman fainted. Another started praying loudly. I wanted to scream too, but I couldn't make a sound. And then everything stopped. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. The shapes in the water sank. The pale faces pulled back into the deep. The scraping stopped. The knocking stopped. The massive thing beneath us vanished into the black. 5 seconds later, the ocean was completely still, like glass. The captain made one more announcement that day. "Ladies and gentlemen, everything is under control. Please return to your scheduled activities." No one did. How could they? Later that night, I went to the dining hall, desperate to be around people instead of in my cabin. It was nearly empty. Maybe 20 passengers total, a female crew member, the same one who warned me earlier, approached me quietly. She sat across from me, pretending to refill my water, and whispered, "You need to sleep with your cabin light on tonight. Do not open the door for anyone." Not even staff. My hands were shaking. "What are those things?" I whispered. She didn't look at me when she answered. "They're the ones we couldn't save. The ones the ocean kept." She stood up before I could ask anything else and walked away without another word. I left my food untouched. I didn't want answers anymore. I didn't sleep. I sat in my bed with the light on, staring at the door, waiting. At 3 a.m. sharp, the ship jolted. Not violently, more like a tap, a push. Then another, then another. Something was knocking against the outside of the hull, all around us, all along the ship's length. Multiple knocks, hundreds of them. Donk, 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 like dozens of fists tapping on steel. I covered my ears and squeezed my eyes shut, rocking back and forth on the bed. I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to know. But then something whispered from behind the wall, the side facing the ocean. "Maria?" I froze. That voice, that same drowned voice, "Come down, come back, with us." The wall vibrated as something scraped against it one last time. And then, silence. Total, absolute silence. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, the ship pulled into New York 2 days early. We docked with no announcement, no explanation. Passengers weren't even checked out one by one like usual. Security rushed us off the ship in waves, telling everyone to keep moving and not look back. I saw military officers waiting on the dock, government vehicles, medical teams. Something huge had happened, something they were never going to tell us. As I stepped onto the gangway, the same staff woman caught my wrist gently. She didn't smile. She didn't look relieved. She looked exhausted, haunted. She said just 3 words. "They remembered you." I wanted to ask what she meant. But before I could, security pushed us forward, and I lost her in the crowd. I haven't been on a ship since. I don't go near beaches. I don't even shower with the bathroom door closed anymore. The sound of water makes me nervous, because sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet and the house is still, I swear I hear it again, that faint knocking. Donk, 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 from somewhere deep in the pipes. And sometimes, if I listen closely, I hear a whisper beneath it, a familiar whisper, calling my name. If you ever find yourself out at sea, whether it's on a cruise, a research vessel, or a small fishing boat, just remember this. We've only mapped about 5% of the world's oceans. The rest, silent, dark, and hiding things we were never meant to see. If you hear knocking on the hull, if you see pale shapes beneath the waves, if someone whispers your name from the water, don't look, don't answer, and whatever you do, don't let them in. Because once the ocean remembers you, it never lets you go.